You're listening to the Call Kent podcast, where Kent C. Dodds answers questions and gives insights to software engineers like you. Now, let's hear the call.
Hey Kent, my name is Jordan, and I have a question about testing for you. I have seen the testing pyramid and your testing trophy, but I'm wondering if we might be able to come up with a new kind of testing analogy. Now, this is kind of specifically scoped to the context of thinking about testing a software application that consists of like a front end and a backend API. So I've worked at several SaaS companies, and I've seen a lot of different ways that people go about testing something like a SaaS product. So we want to be able to ship code confidently, and a big piece of that is validating that the system works as we expect it to. And a lot of that confidence comes historically from end-to-end testing. But I wonder if we have built a system that has a back end and a front end that are both using some sort of type-safe language and generating types from a specification file, like an OpenAPI specification file, or using gRPC or GraphQL or something like that. Does that give us enough confidence to where we can think a whole lot less about end-to-end testing? So if our back end is fully integration tested and our front end is fully integration tested using something like Mock Service Worker, where we can control the endpoints and validate that they're working as expected, or that the UI is rendering as expected based on the responses from the API, then I'm wondering if we think about the confidence that we get from a specification file and the auto-generated types that we get going both ways to the back end and the front end, it seems like we don't really need to write hardly any end-to-end tests, that we might only need some smoke tests, because we can have a good level of confidence knowing that our backend and front end are both integration tested and that they're building to the same specification file. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on if you think that, maybe there's a new analogy we can come up with for testing that allows us to think a whole lot less about end-to-end testing, and maybe it doesn't even need to play that big of a role anymore, because we have this confidence that comes from static type safety, specifically being generated from like something like an OpenAPI specification file. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
And that was the call. Here's what Kent had to say.
Hey, Jordan, thanks for the question. This is an interesting one. And it actually, I definitely have heard of people doing this. The thing is, you can't just completely rely on all these integration tests, because you do need to make sure that you're integrating between these two systems, even though they're like technically generating or testing against the same generated file or types or whatever. That isn't like, there's a lot of confidence that you get out of that, but I don't think that it's going to be the end all be all solution. Like there are some things that you only really get from end-to-end tests, like verifying a user journey through the overall experience, and the system under conditions that mimic real world usage as closely as possible, stuff like that. So I think it's like, while you can reduce the number of end-to-end tests you need to write, and like the testing trophy is kind of focused on integration tests. So I don't think that you're going against what the testing trophy is suggesting. And it does seem to me that the shape of the testing trophy will kind of change based on the architecture of your app and how you put things together. Like typically for lots of the apps that I'm building, it's all full stack in a single app. And so doing a end-to-end test is actually simpler. But like even simpler than integration tests in some cases. And so my trophy is a little top heavy, whereas it sounds like yours is a lot more of two separate systems that are integrating. And so you can do a lot of integration tests of those systems individually, and then have a handful of end-to-end tests that manage the overall user experience of what the user is experiencing. And yeah, so like the key workflows are the ones that you're going to want to focus on. And like if you're doing e-commerce, you want to add to cart, remove from cart, add another one to the cart, increase the quantity, then go to checkout, and then perform the checkout, make sure that the success page is correct, and whatever was supposed to be scheduled gets scheduled or whatever. So all of those steps, that entire flow, I think is still worthwhile having an end-to-end test for those sorts of things. I would say that's more than just a smoke test. For me, smoke test is like the app loads, that sort of thing. So yeah, I would have a little bit more meat to my end-to-end test, even when you have a lot of confidence in your integration because the contracts and the specs and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. Thanks for bringing up the topic. Hopefully what I shared is helpful to you, and I hope you have a nice day.
This has been the Call Kent podcast. Learn more about Kent at kentcdodds.com and get your own questions answered at kentcdodds.com/calls.